Hi, everybody. This is Scott Nybakken for Dynamite Comics, and I'm here with writer Brandon Montclaire to talk about his new series bringing Disney's DuckTales back to comics. Brandon, thanks for joining us on the channel.
Hey, thanks for having me. I'm excited to talk comics.
So to start off, can you tell us a bit about your experience with the original DuckTales animated series? Did you watch the show when you were young, and I assume you've gone back and watched it since then?
Yeah, I did watch it when I was young. I watched it. It was I was a little bit older, so I was still a kid, but maybe at the time I thought DuckTales might not have been too cool. Whereas foolishly I'd say, oh, Transformers, that's really cool, or GI Joe or He-Man would be really cool. But as a kid, I literally watched everything. I read tons of comic books. So I read it, and it's very much true that when you kind of go back and look at some of the stuff, at least from my point of view, it doesn't really all hold up. But the DuckTales was a really good cartoon, and I kind of had a feeling it would be when I went back and watched some of the episodes again, and it really does hold up as quality for everybody. And I have two daughters who 7 and 15, so it's easy for them to kind of sit down and watch it also. So it's been good times.
Yeah. So and the core of DuckTales is the quartet of Huey, Dewey, Louie, and their fantastically wealthy uncle Scrooge McDuck.
Right.
But there's also a memorable cast of supporting characters that populated the city of Duckburg and the wider world beyond. Who can we expect to see from that extended crew in this new series?
Very much consciously in the first few issues, it's going to be concentrating on those core four guys of Uncle Scrooge and Huey, Dewey, and Louie. And not only just that, also them in Duckburg, we are kind of excited to do. And because it's so well known, obviously, for traveling all over the world, looking for treasure every place, all different kinds of, cultures, both realistic in history and imagined and alien and everything else that you could do. But we said, let's start with the first few issues in Duckburg with just the four of them, where you're only going to see a sprinkling of the ancillary characters, but by the time we get to issue 6, everyone's going to be in it. So they're all coming, and so I think it's a good mix. Lets everyone kind of focus on the core guys, and kind of it's really Uncle Scrooge's story, and then how the nephews kind of bounce off of him, literally, but also story wise. And it should be a lot of fun. And in those first few issues, there's also flashbacks where we get to see a lot of the classic villains. So you're going to see Magica Dispel and the Beagle Boys and Glomgold and all those guys.
Yeah, and speaking of which, it's impossible to talk about DuckTales without acknowledging the legendary comic book stories that laid the foundations for the series, especially those crafted by Carl Barks and Don Rosa. Do you remember the first time you read one of those stories? What was your reaction?
I've been reading comics, like I said, my whole life. I was older when I read all of that stuff, so I didn't grow up on it. Like I wasn't a kid reading. Like I said, it obviously goes back to the 50s, but the stuff's always been in print and reprinted. So I would have, at some point, I can't even remember the first time I did it. I had a friend of mine who was like actually super into it, so it might have been the first time. And I would have definitely been, like you said, kind of a professional working in editorial at the time. When someone says, "Oh, you got to read the Carl Barks stuff," and I did. And then Don Rosa's stuff, I remember winning all those awards. When it was the Gemstone stuff was reprinting it, right? And or not even reprinting it, printing it. So I was kind of always aware of it. And I think if you're a professional and you've been in it as long as I have, you're going to come across Carl Barks and realize that he really was a master of that storytelling and simplicity. So I tried to bring a lot of that stuff back into our new project.
Yeah, and a lot of those stories, of course, were famous for their far-flung settings and globe-trotting adventures, which is something that they did, as you mentioned, they did in the DuckTales animated series.
Right.
And you've touched on this already, but what kind of traveling and globe-trotting do you see happening in the series going forward?
Yeah, well, like anything and everything. That's really the point. It's they're going to be arcs of story that kind of, and people always say this, oh, each individual issue stands alone, but it's also part of an arc. No, we're very consciously doing that type of stuff where we do have each issue or each individual chapter, really does give you a story, and we're always switching locations. Like I said, the first 5 take place in Duckburg, but it's all over the different areas of Duckburg and kind of how Scrooge had his hand in building them or establishing them. So you're going to go to the jailhouse, and you're going to go to the library, and you're going to go to the movie theater, and those are going to be kind of like separate locations. And you always want the setting to be a character in the story. So you get kind of that in the beginning, along with flashbacks to all kinds of places. And then, I'm going to, just like in the cartoon, it's not even going to be, it's going to be mythological settings. It's going to be, like I said, alien invader settings. You're going to get a bit of everything as it goes on.
Yeah, and then like a lot of the older fans of the Disney books know that the Disney ducks have been and continue to be hugely popular in Europe. And Tommaso Randa, the artist for this new series, like comes out of that tradition. Like, how has the collaboration been with him so far?
Yeah, it's been fantastic. The art is absolutely dynamite. It's so good. All those studio guys, and they do those Panini comics and the different European market stuff. They've been doing it for years, and Tommaso's stuff is fantastic. It's usually it takes a bit of time to sync up with a writer and an artist and kind of get on the same page, literally and figuratively with the storytelling. It's just like you hit the ground running with Tommaso on the art, because he gets everything at how it should look, if that makes any sense. So, obviously there's tons of material in the comics. There's tons of material with the cartoon. So I can kind of, hopefully put together something for the artists that they understand, and then they can, do a good job with it. And like I said, with Tommaso, it's just it's seamless. It's amazing. There's some preview pages out. Those are the first 4 pages I saw, just like all the readers have seen it. And you could just see how fantastic it is.
Yeah, and like I'd already asked you about the upcoming characters, but I did want to ask specifically about my personal favorite, Gyro Gearloose.
Okay.
When are we going to see him?
You're going to see him, but not in the first few issues.
Okay.
I like Gyro a lot. He's been around forever. But like I said, all the fan favorites are going to be there. He's pretty cool. Like I said, all kinds of favorites. I like Doofus. I like even Webby. But it's going to be after the first few issues that I get to play with those guys and showcase them for the readers.
Yeah. And finally, and this is an age-old question that perhaps has no answer, but
Okay.
Scrooge McDuck and Magica Dispel and Flintheart Glomgold, they're all ducks.
Right.
But what manner of being are the Beagle Boys?
Yeah. Aren't they beagles? Aren't they dogs? I know they look kind of like rats, but they got the floppy ears. I always figured they're dogs in the same kind of vein as Goofy, right? So they have dogs. Disney has dogs like Pluto that are dogs, and dogs like Goofy that are people.
And that is in fact the correct answer.
Is that okay? Good.
Yeah.
And it's funny because the gang about 4 blocks that way is Bowery, because I live in New York City, and so they're named after an old gang of Bowery boys, hooligans, and they live up to it. And they're great characters. I like that if you look at the earliest comics, they're all the same except for the different number. And then you have Ma Beagle, who comes in and kind of mixes it up, and then they've gotten different personalities. So you kind of get a mix of this weird uniformity and this strangeness. But yeah, they're dogs, just like Duckworth. The butler's a dog.
Yeah,
named Duckworth.
Well, Brandon, thank you for joining us, and thanks for everyone for watching. DuckTales #1 will be in stores in November, so be sure to pre-order it now, and follow Dynamite Comics on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and X to hear more about all of our upcoming releases.
Thank you, Brandon. Oh, thank you. It was a lot of fun.